Hello, everybody, and welcome to Damian and DEO, the wrestling edition, because it's Wednesday. Find the show on youtube.com as well as on anchor.fm, your one-stop shop for podcast needs. This week was the season finale, DEO, of Dark Side of the Ring, and you and I have been chronicling it for weeks now. It's been an interesting journey. We've talked about drug use. We've talked about hookers. We've talked about death. We've talked about how the wrestling... cocaine and hookers and cowboy boots.
Yep.
A lot of weird things, but a lot of cathartic moments too throughout this season. Last night was the episode that you and I individually were kind of dreading because we know how we are as empaths, and we were going to feel some things just like we felt at the Chris Benoit thing at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
So it was a nice bookend for this season to have the Owen Hart episode, and I'm already starting to get choked up just thinking about it. It was, for those that don't know, Owen Hart tragically lost his life in an accident that could have been prevented. Let's just put that out on the table now. Could have been prevented, and should have. Yes, sorry, I misspoke. But the story also showed a wife who was determined to not let her husband's legacy literally die in that ring. And I found that to be one of the most uplifting parts of the episode. Martha Hart, along with children with Owen, started their own foundation. And the son is going into law. The daughter is going into journalism. And the best thing I heard during the whole episode, and I'll let you have the floor after this, is she wants nothing to do with the WWE.
Yeah.
And I, for one, am grateful to hear that. So let's just start with early thoughts of the episode when we first started watching it.
So it's a thing that I've said for a long time. Owen Hart was the prototype.
Yes.
He was the first person that we saw that could literally do everything. You could take Owen Hart from back then, plug him in right now, and he would thrive.
Yes.
He could work every style. He worked in Japan. He worked in Mexico. He worked everywhere with everybody back in the day. And everybody said he was a prodigy. Like they must have reiterated that at
least 5 times.
At least 5-6 times in the first hour. You know what I'm saying? Like he was that goddamn good, right? Like I didn't appreciate him as a kid because he was saddled with a bunch of bullshit gimmicks, and the whole jealousy angle with Bret Hart was a thing. But like I know folks be like, oh yeah, Bret Hart's the best. No, Owen Hart, technically speaking, as far as being able to do multiple styles, he was a better wrestler.
Right.
No two ways about that. He took garbage gimmicks and somehow made them gold.
Yes.
Like when they stuck him in the Nation of Domination, that wouldn't have worked with anybody else.
Nope.
But he got it over because he was that damn good. And like seeing this now, like I think about the stuff now. Like I couldn't appreciate a lot of these things as a kid because we were programmed by WWE to think a certain way about certain people and such, which we might get into that a little bit later. But like, it was one of those, he was just that damn good. Like when he passed, we lost a good one. We lost a great one when it comes to pro wrestling, because from all accounts, he was just a straight up dude.
Yeah.
Just a genuinely good guy, and would push back against the brass as well, which in that day and age was not a thing that you could do unless you were a Hulk Hogan, or a top build person. You were not going to be able to push back.
Which he wasn't. He at the time he was not a top build individual.
Not at all. But the fact that he would still push back was dope. But yeah, like it was getting to see him with his family, like that made the whole episode worse for me.
Yeah.
Because like he just looked like a good dad. And like, so from watching it went from happiness, from reminiscing about the stuff and seeing that he was a good dude, to sadness, to by the end of it, it was just rage. Because as we saw in this, to put it short and simple, he died because Kevin Dunn and Vince McMahon wanted to shave a couple seconds off of an entrance.
Yeah.
And that's the most enraging part about all of this. Was because this wasn't his fault. You know, it's like this differs from Benoit, right? Because Benoit actively wrestled a style that he knew was going to harm him in the long run, right? He did that to his family and then did that to himself in the end. Owen didn't deserve any of this. He didn't do anything to lead to his demise. So like this was that much sadder for me was because it never should have happened. And like everybody that was involved in the situation, the referee, JR, even Lawler, and I hate Lawler from the depths of my soul. Even him, when he was like, it doesn't look good. That was the only time I have ever seen Jerry Lawler be genuine in anything in life. And that stuck with me. And like with JR as well, having to fill dead time. And in the back, they're just like, oh yeah, well, yeah, he died. And we're back in 3, 2, 1. These people are heartless.
Yes.
Like when we talk about like Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn being trash people, we're not saying this without basis. We have basis for this. And this solidifies it. For them to be like, oh yeah, no. Well, and to continue the night on, they should have ended it there. For so many other reasons. One, the structural integrity of the ring was compromised after that.
Yes. They've mentioned that. Yeah.
The ring had so where he hit, there was still blood on the mat. You could see that in the pictures. This is now an active crime scene. They should have stopped it. The police should have came in and they should have immediately started to check things out, right? The ring had a dip where his body hit. That's like...
That tells you enough right there.
And they continued. The other talent had to wrestle in the ring that he just died in. Stand in the spot that he hit. Like that kind of stuff fucks with people's psyches forever. It doesn't get erased. Like seeing JR have to recall this stuff was rough because you can tell when people actually do not want to relive these things. DEO, all of these people, they did not. This is stuff that you could tell that these were genuine moments. And they're like, you don't forget stuff like that. It gets burned into your brain.
Yes.
And for them to just continue on as though it was just regular and still wrestle another 5-6 matches. This is how you know Vince McMahon does not look at these people as people. He looks at them as toys, as puppets. He is the one pulling the strings as they do this stuff. Because if he cared about them like actual people, one, he would have made sure that he had proper safety protocols. period. Like you don't have somebody that doesn't know what they're doing to go when somebody is coming down that high off of the ceiling. You have to have proper safety protocol, and they didn't. And like, even like as we found out when the lawsuit later, the hook that they used was a quick latch, was not even meant for that. It was a quick release hook that unlatches with 6 pounds of pressure. 6 pounds. 6 pounds of pressure. This glass is probably about 2 pounds. It's heavy. So 3 of these. 3 of these. So if I hung 3 of these together, it would make that unlatch. And you
Owen Hart was 245 pounds.
245 pounds. So the moment he jumped off, he came off. And they just were like, well,
the show must go on.
The show must go on. Like, that's disturbing on so many levels. Like, think of any other, like, think of, say, in a football game, right? If a player dies on the field, like, and they're pronounced dead, that's the end of the game. That's the end of the game. Basketball, it's going to be the same thing. Like, even when there's like a gruesome injury, at least they stop to make sure that the person's okay, right? This, they were just like, they're panning off to the crowd while commentary has to make sense of all of this stuff. And like, it was just rough. It was just a rough one to watch.
It was, you know, I watched it twice. I watched it last night and I watched it to get ready for today's show. And this makes me very disenfranchised with wrestling in general. We started the season again talking about Chris Benoit. And in the middle, we had a whole bunch of funny stuff, you know, with cocaine and hookers and things. And we also had murder, Jimmy Snuka, Chris Benoit. We had not suicide. We had, you know, drug overdoses or, you know, drug-induced deaths with the Road Warriors. But this one, for me, above all else, kind of hit harder because if you've been a wrestling fan, a WWF and WWE fan, as long as, you know, the two of us have, and I've been a fan since 1987, and I've watched the art of wrestling change multiple times. Knowing that this should have been prevented, knowing that a man who, you know, to quote Guile from Street Fighter, a family man who all his contemporaries said was one of the most genuine people you could ever work with. Even though he was a prankster, he never meant it his ribs were never hurtful. It was always ha ha ha.
Right.
A person whose talent was only surpassed by his humanity.
Right.
And when you find out why the Blue Blazer gimmick, because let me give some backstory for people. The Blue Blazer gimmick was a corny superhero gimmick, which back in the 80s I actually dug. I didn't know it was Owen Hart when I was a kid. It
was a very 80s thing, yeah.
When we talk about things can only survive in certain timelines. He was only gifted the gimmick again because he resisted a infidelity angle with Deborah McMichael, who was the valet of Jeff Jarrett at the time, former wife of Steve McMichael, as well as Stone Cold Steve Austin. Because he was a family man, he didn't want to do that angle.
Right.
And as you stated earlier, it's kind of hard to get Vince to change his mind over something with creative that if you don't really agree with it, Vince says, this is good shit. We're going to go with it, because back then, that's when the Attitude Era, you know, he wrestled the night he was supposed to wrestle the Godfather, the night he died. And the Godfather, we talk about on the show, how much we appreciate, you know, Charles Wright, the person, the storyteller.
Right.
But the Godfather was essentially a pimp character.
Right.
So Owen Hart, good guy Blue Blazer, was supposed to wrestle the pimp Godfather because he didn't want to be in an angle where he was portrayed as cheating on his wife with Deborah McMichael.
Yep.
So he did the right thing. He said, you can give me this chicken shit and I'm going to make chicken salad out of it because I'm Owen motherfucking Hart.
Right.
Because they also talk about the Montreal Screwjob with his brother Brett, who, like you just said earlier in this episode, you think Owen is the better wrestler than Brett. Brett left WWF/E under acrimonious circumstances with the Montreal Screwjob. So Jim Ross goes on air and literally says, we kept Owen happy because of Montreal.
Yep.
I don't buy the whole we wanted to make him a star. I buy the whole we only paid him because he was the only one left. So for him to say, I don't want to do this risque gimmick because I'm a family man. I have a wife and 2 children.
Right.
And then for him to say during the episode, it's recounted that he wasn't fully comfortable doing the second stunt. The first stunt, because it was a Hollywood rig crew.
Right.
Who the harness, if you look at the first harness,
was a harness.
It was a harness.
A secure.
It was secure.
Harness. If you have ever been rappelling, if you've ever done anything of that nature, you can tell that's a reinforced harness. You look at the shit that they had him in. Like I wouldn't
climb rocks with that. I wouldn't do a wall climb with that.
I wouldn't try to get something out of the top cabinet using that shit. Like it was so bad. Like this was so bad that it never should have happened.
No.
And it was just so bad. It should not have happened. Like I will die on this hill. Like I don't care if people don't like me for saying it. Like 2 things. Vince McMahon is the worst person in pro wrestling. He is the most vile individual in professional wrestling. Worse than Moolah, worse than a bunch of people. He is responsible for more deaths than anybody in professional wrestling. Not allegedly. No. He is responsible for more deaths than anybody else.
Both indirectly and
directly. He is responsible for more hardships on people in the industry than any other person. And it's not even close. And the fact of the matter is, things will not get better until he dies. Because he will be on his deathbed, full dementia, going in and out of consciousness, still trying to book this stuff, still trying to push these BS things. And the simple fact that he is so petty that because this person says, I don't feel comfortable doing this, he is going to strap them with something like this.
Yes.
There is no other job that you could legally do this. No other job where you could legally do this, where you can say, well, I didn't feel comfortable doing this. So because you don't feel comfortable doing that, I'm going to give you the worst. I'm going to punish you for it. Yes. No other job that you could not do that. That's one of the reasons why they're never going to unionize, especially under Vince, because then you'll have somebody that will be able to fight back against him. So yeah, no unionizing because of that. Vince is also, he is the one above all, to use comic book lingo. He is the one above all in professional wrestling. Everything that he does affects the rest of the pro wrestling industry. So if he can get away with doing things, smaller promotions are going to think that they can get away with stuff like that as well. And Vince has a very long storied history of things. There are allegations of rape. There are allegations of him covering up murders for people.
Which was documented this season on Dark Side of the Ring.
Right. So like, he is a vile individual. I understand that people love him, but 2 things can be true. Somebody can give you, just like in any type of relationship, because that's the thing. What we have with pro wrestling is a relationship, right?
Right.
And these people, these characters, right, or these people, two things can be true about a person. They can give you incredible memories,
Yes.
but they can also be utterly despicable. And that's what it is with Vince McMahon. He's giving you the highest of highs growing up, but he has done more harm than he's done good by a wide margin.
You know, I often, and for those who don't know, here on Damian and DEO on YouTube and Anchor.fm, my day job or my regular job is as a therapist and counselor and coach for all walks of life. And I talk to a lot of people who often have shades of gray in their existence. And we're talking about someone like Vince McMahon, who a lot of people say the good outweighs the bad. But what I will say is the levels of bad outdo anything
that he's done
positively you can do in the realm of professional wrestling.
Yeah.
You said it. He potentially, and I think you and I can go on a limb and say the evidence kind of states that he walked into that room in Florida with a bag of money.
Yep.
Got Jimmy Snuka off.
Yep.
From a murder charge. This whole thing now with Owen Hart, as the episode continues to go forward, we find out that after Martha, his wife, sues the WWF/E, he settles.
They settled for $18 million. Yeah. And for me, so I work in the legal industry, right? I videotape depositions. So I get to see both sides of arguments a lot. Back then, this is the situation. A lot of times when you settle, there's two reasons why companies tend to settle. They know they're dead in the water and they're never going to be able to prove this case in court. And with this case, the evidence was way too damning. Even with the fucking Hart family trying to help the McMahon case because they did not want to fuck up their chances with their check, which is trash, but at the same time, it's understandable because he's the king of the mountain. You know, you don't go after God, essentially, right? But so two things: it's either they know they're not going to win, or it's cheaper to settle. But this is before the time of it being cheaper to settle. Nowadays, it's one of those things. It's just cheaper to settle than it is to go through court fees and such like that. They weren't going to win this case. And if you know anything about the WWE, they are litigious. And when I say litigious, that means they are prone to suing people, and they're very good at it. Their tactic has been for like the past 20 years or so. They will tie people up in court for years until the plaintiffs run out of money.
Right.
And the WWE basically has unlimited funds because they have a legal team. They have an in-house legal team. Like they bought a firm basically. And a very good firm at that. So no money out of their pockets really. So they can do this for as long as they want, right? But with this, there was no way for them to win this case. Like when you show 6 pounds of pressure and you have a 240 some odd pound man, you lose that case. Especially with like the witness testimony and stuff. Oh yeah, that was damning. That stuff was damning.
If they would have subpoenaed everybody that night who was there.
Oh yeah, they'd been fucked.
They would have all been fucked.
Yeah.
So I want to bring it back to just Owen in general. You and I, off air and on air, have said the biggest, not even goat in a good way, the biggest heel here, if we're going to use a wrestling term, is fucking Vince McMahon. It's Kevin Dunn. Those are the two middle finger to you guys in this whole story. Anyone who says Martha Hart's the bad girl here, the bad person here,
you can
I'm sorry. Have you ever lost someone through no fault of their own? Through workers' issues, through some sort of negligence by your supervisor?
Right.
No, you haven't.
Something that he was literally forced to do.
He didn't feel comfortable day of doing the stunt. He was dangling there because they show what happened to him. They reenacted it. He wasn't on the perch. He was dangling for a little bit while they did the pre-match promo. So he could be dropped down into the ring while Jimmy Corderas, the referee, was cleaning out the ring. I'm sorry. No. So I'm going to bring it back to Owen and just say, when you have a talent, when you have someone who is legitimately by all accounts, a better human being than they are as a wrestler, when they're one of the top, what did JR say? One of the top 5 pure wrestlers on the planet at that time. And you do them dirty, you don't care.
Yeah.
You don't care about the well-being of your talent. We've talked about this ad nauseum, that Vince McMahon and most wrestling promoters, don't give two shites about talent.
No. They are
puppets.
Money,
they are puppets. They are playthings. If you've ever played the game Super Smash Brothers, Master Hand, it's literally a hand playing with figures.
Right.
That's all it is. And that's what Vince McMahon views his talent as. So as I watch this episode, and I'm going to get humanistic here for a second, guys, so forgive me. When you watch a wife, a mother, go from being, they didn't specify, but it seemed as if she was a stay-at-home mom before Owen's passing, to being this ball of fire, to turning into this, I am going to do this. Like, I'm just going to use the term woman up because it's a simple term to use. She realized, my husband's gone. They took him from me. I'm going to make sure that his legacy lives on my way. The man I knew outside of wrestling. His daughter even says later in the documentary, I wish my dad was never in wrestling because he'd still be here.
Right.
If you can't hear that, and I'm sorry, wrestling fans, as much as we love the art of professional wrestling, there is a line between humanism and sycophant. And a lot of people nowadays are a lot of sycophants in terms of wrestling. And we're going to get into fandom in the latter half of this episode. But to hear his daughter say that, to see his wife and his son say that, and to say, my time with my dad stopped at a certain time, and that's what I choose to remember. And I take it back to the Nancy Benoit thing. And when you have a parent or a loved one where you know them up to a point and something took them away from you, this goes beyond sports. This goes beyond athleticism. This goes beyond anything else. This is human. And to know that this, like you said, DEO, should have been prevented. And it wasn't prevented. And to have, and I'm not a big JR guy. I've never been a big JR guy because I feel like he's one of those Cornette types who will die with the business. To see JR, Jim Ross, to see Cornette, to see The Godfather, to see D'Lo, to see everybody they talk to damn near cry at the mention of Owen Hart's passing, tells you enough about the man. And then when you hear about the family dynamics, the videos, and yes, I know Vice TV makes it really easy for it to be one-sided. I get that. But if you don't have a heart, if you don't have a soul or a spirit, and you can't resonate with what Martha Hart was going through, then I'm sorry, you're part of the problem.
Right.
Because she deserved closure. When she walked the catwalk to see where her husband died, when she went through the documents to see, like you said, DEO, the 6 pounds of pressure. They say, oh, if you don't touch this the stunt coordinator, whoever the guy was, as long as you don't pull this, you're good.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't pull it.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't good.
Yeah.
And his last words, allegedly his last words, falling to his death from 80 fucking feet, were look out. DEO,
Like
his last words were look out, looking for other people.
And like, yeah. Yeah. Like that was just, and like with the whole Martha Hart thing, I do not understand how people have watched that and were like mad at her. Like this is the part that does not connect with me.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, how can you defend what happened?
You can't.
This isn't like this was a freak accident. This was something that was easily corrected. Just have a proper harness. But Kevin Dunn and Vince McMahon wanted to shave off a couple seconds, so they put somebody's life at stake, which is something that they do on a regular basis still to this day.
Which I would have thought back then was a fluke accident, but what we know now,
yeah. As a kid, I couldn't fathom what happened because they never went into detail about what happened.
Right.
And then the shit that fucking infuriated me was when I believe it was like a female reporter was asking Vince McMahon about it. He's like, I don't like your tone. Fuck you, Vince. Fuck you. This is something that you need to talk about. You need to address this. Things need to be answered. Like, this is... It's indefensible. Like, you cannot... There is no way to defend what McMahon and company did. There's just no way to defend it. If you do, you are a trash person. Like, when stuff like this happens, like, I wish there was some sort of like a karmic rule that was in place. That if when something like this happens, right? So, for instance, Owen Hart died. They filed wrongful death suit, right? Mm-hmm. If you, in a situation like this, if you are opposed to this, if any of your family members die on a job, you can't sue. That is like, I wish there was some sort of a karmic rule like that. So if you are like, well, that it wasn't their fault. No. If you are this adamant about it, you should not be able to do the same thing if one of your family members dies.
Right.
Because I do not understand how you can even attempt to come up with an argument for that. Because there is no defendable argument for it. There's no feasible moral argument about this at all. This is just you being a sycophant. This is just you wanting to toe the line for the company, and you don't work for the company. You don't make money from the company. This does not affect you in any quantifiable way, right?
Anyway,
you are defending something that just gives you entertainment, and that's all it is. It's just entertainment. Like, I know to a lot of you pro wrestling fans, it's reality. The whole, it's still real to me, damn it. That's still y'all. Y'all are still trapped in this
bubble
of thinking that this is still real, right? You still think that you can just talk to these people, right? People. These are people. These are not the characters that they portray on TV are not who they are in real life. These are actual people. So when there's an outcome at a match that you don't like, a predetermined, outcome to a match.
Mind you, it's predetermined, yeah.
Predetermined that they didn't come up with. Something that an old dude decided it was going to be the ending. So instead of going after the old dude to being like, you go and curse out and call this person all types of expletives and slurs like it was a real thing that happened.
Right. But something like this happens.
Right. And y'all want to
calling the wife. You're calling the wife of the man that died.
Right.
The bad guy here.
The bad guy.
Okay.
Like it doesn't make any kind of sense whatsoever. There's this weird thing in fandom. Plus, like that, I mean, there's a weird thing going on. I shouldn't say right now because misogyny's been a thing for a very, very long time. Right. And there's something about a strong woman, especially, that men don't like. They've been trained.
Oh, we've talked about this. Men tend to not like women, period, sometimes.
Yeah, they've been trained to not like them. And the thing about with Vince McMahon and with like pro wrestling fans, he has created this fandom. He has molded this fandom over a period of 35 years. He has molded it into what it is now. He has this undying, unshakable fan base that no matter what he does, they are going to go up for him no matter what. Like, legitimately, and I'm not joking when I say this, there could be irrefutable proof that Vince McMahon's a pedophile. Irrefutable proof. And you're still going to have a large chunk of the fan base that are still going to defend him. And more than likely will blame the children. Because we've seen it in multiple other situations. We see it with R. Kelly. Yep. We've seen it with a bunch of folks. When people have an undying fan base, the people will support them no matter what, even when there is concrete evidence, right? So that's a hypothetical. These are concrete facts that he was responsible for these people's deaths.
Yeah.
Concrete evidence that he has done these despicable things, right? Like now, like hell, even something more recent. Nikki Bella alleged in the book that, you know, they're like, oh yeah, you don't need an MRI. She's like, I can't stand for long periods of time. My
hands and feet get numb.
My hands and feet get numb. Yo, you don't need an MRI. And then finally, once you get to MRI, they're like, oh no, you got to get major surgery. Tyson Kidd.
Yep.
They're just like, oh yeah, you just go home, you'll be okay, sleep it off. He needed serious surgery that a very small percentage of people survive. Yep. But they were just like, oh no, it's not that big of a deal, right? CM Punk was like, he had a staph infection. What was it? Yep. It turned into like MRSA. Yeah,
it was MRSA.
Documented MRSA. And for those of you that don't understand what MRSA is, right? Because I remember, and this is how petty the WWE is. They put a video out showing just a video on YouTube and Twitter, just showing the area that CM Punk said that he had the MRSA infection, the lower back. They were like, oh no, it's not there. Just because you don't have a lesion on the outside of your body doesn't mean that you don't have MRSA. Yep. And for you, like, for those of you that don't know what MRSA is, that is so you have staph is one thing. Most of us have had staph in some way in our lifetime. A lot of times it goes away.
It goes away.
away. MRSA is a drug-resistant strain of that. And when I say drug-resistant, that means like you can't take, doesn't matter what medication you take for it, it's not going to go away.
So no penicillin's going to do the job.
No penicillin's going to do the job. No, none of that. Like
no hydrox or whatever. No
hydrochloroquine. You know, like Trump claims he's taking, which I'm gonna go down the list on that at some point, probably on Friday. It's a very long list of things. Yeah, tomorrow rather. But like between that, who else has been? Who was injured recently? But like, there's a long line of people.
There is a long list of people.
Daniel Bryan.
I will not die on this hill, but I will fight on this hill. The only reason they cleared him was so he couldn't go to AEW.
Yep.
That's it.
That's it.
They could have cleared him years ago. The only reason why is because they didn't want him going either to New Japan or mostly AEW, because his independent doctors were like, dude, you're good.
You're good. Yep.
Like with the Nikki Bella thing. It's like there. Okay, have you if the audience has ever seen the movie Any Given Sunday? So I used to be a big football fan.
Mm-hmm.
I started my broadcast career talking sports talk radio. Mm-hmm. So that movie showed me first off, James Woods is a whole different animal in real life. But the character James Woods plays is the team doctor. All right. It's a football movie, team doctor, basically covering up a major brain injury for Lawrence Taylor's character. It's like, yeah, you're good, looking at the brain scans. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Doctors, air quotes, are this negligent?
Yep.
Because at the time in 1999, I was 19 years old. So I'm still a teenager and an older teenager. I don't know the ways of the world. I don't think that doctors, the people you trust with your health, are going to screw you, essentially. And then fast forward, because I know that movie, because I saw the movie Concussion, because I know things like this exist, doctors on a payroll of $1 billion, $1 million company, they're willing to overlook a few things. Fuck the Hippocratic Oath.
Yep.
So I am not surprised when I hear CM Punk, when I hear Nikki Bella. Shoot, Daniel Bryan has never said it out loud, but I know deep down inside he must be like, them mofos were doing this to me on purpose.
Yeah.
Do no harm, right? That's the Hippocratic Oath, is do no harm. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it seems like a lot of harm being done over the years at WWF. And we talked about this deal from the I want to say late 80s to the 2000s. Is the largest non-in-ring death tally of wrestlers who had passed away while under the WWF/E moniker. You don't think that's a little bit suspicious?
Right. Like all of this stuff, things became more unsafe when Vince McMahon took the reins.
From his dad, yes.
From his dad. That's it's near impossible to be like, oh, no. It's when you see the amount of people that have died, especially due to in-ring, like we know now, like how people have talked about even on Dark Side of the Ring, how like, oh yeah, our schedule was this, but then once we went to WWE, 14 days on, 4 days off. Like
that's crazy. I didn't know it was that. That's crazy.
2 weeks. Understand this. So imagine having to go to work 2 weeks in a row, just in your regular job. You know, if you got a 9 to 5 behind the keyboard, if you work retail, imagine having to work 14 days in a row. Now, think about this. Now you are essentially getting into multiple car accidents every day for 14 days straight. And then you have 4 days off. And then you have another 2 weeks of getting into multiple car accidents every day.
Plus travel.
Plus traveling. You don't have time to recuperate.
Nope. Owen said it. He said it in a video. He wishes he could have time to recuperate. He can't wait until he has enough money where he can take time off and rest. Look, people say to work in wrestling, you have to be a little bit off kilter as an active talent. And you know what? I've been around enough wrestling to know in the last 4 years, you do got to be a little bit off kilter.
Yeah.
But this is some whole new shite, man. See, you and I have been really bullish on AEW, right? Problematic, not inclusive.
Yep.
But I will give them credit on one thing. They don't tour house shows.
Right.
They just have their weekly television show, even when Corona didn't exist, even when COVID was not happening. Their weekly television show and a major pay-per-view once every 2 or 3 months.
Right.
That's it.
That's it.
So at the very least, they're looking at, hey, I don't want my talent to burn out. Now, I don't know the contract situation, but I know in WWE, when you graduate from NXT to the main roster, you're getting a low 6 figures at the very least.
Right.
Downside guarantees and all that jazz and merchandising and everything like that. So that supposedly makes it better. Now, sports fans would counter that a baseball season, 162 games, travel, blah, 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 or the NBA or the NHL or the NFL with a 16-game regular season, soon to be 17, 18. I think hockey and the NFL are the closest comparison to professional wrestling in terms of wear and tear in your body. But even in football, bro, it is only 16 games and it's once a week.
Yeah. I'd say rugby would probably be the closest thing because you have no protection. At least with football, with American football, you have protection.
Agreed.
Of some sort, right? Rugby is probably going to be the closest thing because it's just body slamming into bodies. And yeah, like when people are like, oh yeah, there's it's not fake. Yeah. It's when it comes to that, what happens to your body, it's not fake. Like that shit's real. It hurts. Right? Like I dare any of you go to a wrestling seminar of some sort. Or just have somebody body slam you on like a mat.
Just take a bump.
Just take a bump. Matter of fact, no, do this. So you know how you do squats. Sit down like you're doing a squat, put your hands out, and then throw yourself back onto the ground. Go try that.
I've done it.
And see
how it don't feel good.
Exactly. See how that feels. So you do that 20 times during a match, probably 10 to 20 times per match. And you have to do that 14 days in a row.
And I know the house show circuit, they'll sometimes throw people in tag matches to reduce the wear and tear on the house show circuit, or they'll limit the bumps to make it more mat based for the real air quotes real wrestlers out there. It still freaking hurts.
It's all of house shows are a money grab. That's all it is. Because they're not necessary. Because what happens outside of NXT, what happens at house outside of a few times in NXT, house shows don't mean anything.
Right.
House shows at all.
It's
practice. It's, of course, some talent's like, oh yeah, that's when we get to have fun, right? But even though it's fun, it's still wear and tear on the bodies. It's just a money grab. House shows are never sold out, ever.
Because we know as fans.
Yeah, like we know it doesn't mean anything. We're just going there just to see the talent, right? But that's still wear and tear on the body. It's literally just a money grab by the WWE. That's all it is. There is no reason to have house shows at all. That it's not growing your fan base. The only people that go to house shows are already fans.
Right. They're just going because this is the one chance in your small town, usually your small town, to be able to see your favorite performer at a reasonable price. I'll say reasonable because some house shows, the upper bowls are pretty affordable.
Crazy, yeah. But like some of the stuff on the ground level is like crazy expensive. Or like front row, it's still going to be in the hundreds. So
no, it's a house show.
Yeah.
I remember 2 years ago, I went to a house show at Madison Square Garden with some old coworkers, and it wasn't front row. It wasn't even the floor. It was like the one row above the floor. It cost us $80.
Yeah.
For a house show at MSG.
And there's no reason for it. There is absolutely no reason for a house show. None. Nothing. You don't get to see anything worth anything that means anything. There's nothing of substance that happens, right?
Zero.
So what does this do? They get practice, sure. But above all else, it's just making money for the company. That's it. That's all it is. It's just making more money for the company, a company that already does not need money, especially now that they're getting paid blood money.
Let's be honest. Yes.
So
The Saudi Arabia show, blood money.
it's absolutely blood money, 1000% blood money.
And we've talked about this on numerous occasions. Just it's not. Let's not cast a veil of mystery about that. Saying, "Oh, I just want to bring it to the people of Saudi Arabia because they're left out of the loop." Why not go to Australia more often then if that's the case?
Right.
Well, it's because you're getting how much from the Saudi Arabian government?
Oh yeah, this much. Oh, that's why. But and that's the thing. Even though it's blood money, you will have fans that'll still be like, "Oh, they need to do that." No, and this is one of the issues that I have with so many fans is that they will find a way to just defend anything. They will make up an excuse in their head for anything. Hell, we just saw. So Deanna Purrazzo posted on Twitter that a fan tracked down her personal address and sent her fan mail. Unacceptable. And the worst part is there were fans that were defending what the guy did. That's stalking is what that is. Right? And it's one of these things. You see it more with female performers.
Of course.
Just because,
or you hear about it more.
You hear about it more from female, right? We have this thing, but this is why I say it happens more with women. So, in Western culture, we have been, as men, we have been trained to feel entitled to a woman's attention, affection, body.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those things that there is no boundaries. Like, for if I show you affection, I'm supposed to get something back in return. That's not how this works. It's not transactional. Like, just because you saw in all those movies in the 80s and the 90s and such that, oh, I just was persistent and I kept doing this and eventually she gave it to me. That's not how this works. Women have agency.
It's not real life?
Yeah, women have this thing called agency, right? Meaning that they have control over themselves, over their own bodies, over all of these things. And with female performers as well, Mia Yim jumped out. It was like, yeah, no, that's not cool. This is not acceptable. And then the dude was like, one of the guys trying to defend it was like, oh no, now Mia Yim's got people jumping on my back. I was like, dude, you were wrong. Sit there in your wrongness and just be wrong. Accept it. You're wrong.
Oh, bro.
Take the L. Just accept it. You were wrong. Because I guarantee if your sister or your mother was getting mail from a dude that saw her at Walmart, tracked down her address and was like, hey, I just want to let you know that I really think you're beautiful, you would be ready to go kill somebody.
Yes.
So how is that? Why does that not also happen with wrestlers, right? Like, and there's this weird thing of the transactionality of pro wrestling fandom to where they're like, and this is the argument that we see over and over and over and over again. It's that you wouldn't be anywhere if it wasn't for us, the fans. I buy your merch. I cheer for you during pay-per-views. I make tweets and shitty graphic art about you to post on Twitter and Instagram.
Shitty graphic art, yeah.
Shitty graphic. The emphasis on shitty, because most of this, like, I understand that pro wrestlers like to interact with your fans, but it's okay. You can tell some of these motherfuckers that this shit is trash. You can tell them this is nice. It's not, I appreciate it, but this is dog shit. But that's the thing. You have these people that feel that just because I did this thing for you, you owe me something back. No, not how that works. Because if the same thing happens to somebody in your family, you'd be ready to fight. Yep. And this is like, and the thing is, this is in the entitlement of pro wrestling fans is at an all-time high, because just you'll see like, okay, a pro wrestler might, and since you can interact with pro wrestlers in a way that you've never been able to do before, right? And if you have people that think that just because this pro wrestler might have liked a couple of my tweets, there's a connection there now.
Right. No,
right?
You're not dating. You're not
You're
friends.
not dating. You're not friends. No. You're not part of the group. You're not part of the. You're not part of the boys. You're not in. No, like it's always just that they liked your tweet and that was it. Nothing more. There's nothing else going on there. It's just that, and the fact that so many fans are like I remember it was years ago when Sasha Banks, like the airport picture of Sasha Banks, and like dude was like, oh, she should be appreciative of this. Dude, you tracked her down at the airport
at like 4 a.m.
At 4 a.m. You track, like, here's the thing. If you track people's stuff, like, no, what's gonna happen is one of y'all is gonna get shot. That's when it's going to come to an end, right? That's when y'all will start taking the shit serious. Mm-hmm. When you run up on talent at 4 a.m. when they're coming out of their hotel, one of them is going to kill you. You are going to scare somebody because you run up to them at 4 a.m. demanding something from them. You are going to get shot. And when that happens, maybe you guys will understand this. Just because you're a fan of somebody, that does not mean that you can talk to them any time. No, they are still people. They are still people. Above all, everything else. You being a fan don't mean shit. These are still people that are entitled to their privacy.
People forget that performers, actors, athletes, they're still human.
Still human.
They have private lives that you were not allowed to partake in. Mm-mm. You were not akin to.
Yeah.
And I feel like, especially with, and I talk about fans being short for fanatic, and that makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. Wrestling fans in particular. Now, look, I'm going to go on a limb here and say a lot of wrestling fans I've encountered, their social skills are a little lacking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nerd culture, wrestling, the regular back and forth, like, hey, I can talk to you like a human, may not exist.
Right.
I'm aware of this. And I'm sure a lot of wrestlers and athletes are aware of this too. If we're being honest, I know that certain wrestlers have been instructed to focus on the kids because they're the people that get the parents to buy merch.
Absolutely.
So I understand there might be a disconnect for those, to quote you, it's still real to me, damn it, people.
Yeah.
What I don't appreciate, and I can say this as a women's wrestling supporter and advocate, I don't appreciate the fans waiting outside hotel rooms. I don't appreciate the fans waiting outside the venues to if it's to say, hey, great match tonight, great. But I'll never forget this. And I'm actually going to let people in behind the curtain here with me personally. I was out with a former NFL football player maybe about a year and a half ago. We're friendly. We know each other. I was in town. I was doing my travels. We went out to dinner. We're talking, we're laughing, we're catching up, whatever. And about 5 fans, if you've seen the scene in Avengers Endgame where people come up to talk to come up to Smart Hulk and ask him for a picture when he's having breakfast,
right?
That was the equivalent of us, myself and the player, having some drinks and having a meal. And at first, acquiesced. They took a picture. I took the picture for the people, and they were fine. But then as the night went on, you let one do it, and then more keep coming. And then when the person said, hey, can I at least finish catching up with my friend here? When I leave the restaurant, I promise to sign things for you.
Right.
That wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
Right then and there, they wanted to be, the fans or these seekers wanted to be acquiesce. They wanted to have their thing signed, a picture taken. And me being who I am, I started to get annoyed because I've been around wrestlers too, where they're just trying to, after their match or after performing, they're just trying to just decompress.
Yep.
And then you want to come up to them when they're trying to decompress. Again, 1, 2, 3 tops. Great. But when you get to like multiple people that come up to you when you're trying to be incognito,
right,
and you say, hey, not right now, like now is not the time. And the athlete themselves has been polite,
right,
cordial, respectful,
mm-hmm.
and you still are annoyed and mad, and you go on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook and you pitch a fit, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're an asshole.
Yeah. And like it's like, because we've seen this umpteen times, right? And so this is my theory, or my hypothesis rather, when it comes to pro wrestling fans, right? So in order to enjoy pro wrestling, you have to suspend disbelief. That is one of the key things that you have to do. And since you have so many of these people that lack social skills, this is the only thing that they have, right? Like pro wrestling Twitter and pro wrestling is the only thing that they enjoy. They don't watch anything else. This is all that they have. So they've suspended disbelief for so long that they start to believe this thing that they've created in their head. And it sucks because like it sucks for everybody involved, right? Like was recently like, so with Roman Reigns, best example recently, right? Where once COVID-19 happened, he's like, I don't want to endanger my family. I don't want to endanger my wife that just had twins.
Yep.
I don't want to endanger myself because I just recovered from leukemia. Which for those of you, if you don't know, like leukemia was because he has, that was for him, it was his bones, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't understand what it is, like the bones are where like blood and things get made and such, right? So like if you have leukemia already, right? Something that then weakens your immune system, and then you get that, even if you heal, you recover from it, your body is still going to be weakened because it's and you have these idiots that were just like, oh, you should come back. You're just a fucking chicken. Are you serious? Are you serious? This is a dude that played football. He played American football, then became a professional wrestler. Has beaten leukemia twice. He's not gonna, or multiple times. He doesn't owe you shit. He doesn't want to put himself or his family at harm. So like the other day, since he got another tattoo piece, right?
Yep,
people jumped on. They're like, "Oh, you weren't afraid to go get your stuff tattooed." One, fuck you. He can do what he wants to do. Two, for him, this is like, and cultural significance is a thing that's lost on a lot of Americans, especially white Americans. I hate to have to single you out, but this is who it tends to be. For him, this is not just a tattoo. This is part of his heritage.
Yes. Right?
This is like a rite of passage. So when people jump out to that, it's like, dude, fuck off. Fuck off. You don't know the precautions that he took to get said tattoo, right? Like you don't know that process. You don't know all of these things. So why would you then go and open your mouth wide and let out these stupid things? Just ignorant things that you will say for no reason. Like for something, it's not like this guy is, even when I see like people get on like athletes, which for me, professional wrestlers are not athletes. They are athletic. They are actors.
Yes.
Yes, they are actors. They are performers. This is not a sport. It's not. It's predetermined. It's not a sport. What they're doing is theater. Literally. what they're doing is theater. Like if you go to any of the like Avengers or like Marvel plays and stuff that they have, stage plays, that's what professional wrestlers do. Simulated combat.
Yes.
Right? So like when you have these like it doesn't make any sense to me. It just doesn't make any sense. Like for you to be this invested in this stuff. Like when I could even when like an athlete does something and says they don't want to do something, they're like, "Oh, you owe us, dude." They don't owe you shit.
They don't owe you shit. No, they don't. Stop. Athletes don't owe you nothing.
They don't owe you a fucking
Their
thing.
job is to do their job.
Exactly.
That's what they owe their
we pay you this. No, you don't. You don't.
No, you don't.
You don't. You don't.
That's almost akin to the I pay your taxes guy or gal for civil servants and people like that. No, you don't. Stop it. Stop it. That is just a measure of you trying to feel better about your own life.
Right.
To think that, hey, well, you can look. That's like me saying, just because I buy a jersey from my favorite athlete, that I'm already owed like a Thanksgiving dinner type stuff from that person. Are you insane?
Right. And like when we see, the thing is, we see it so often. That is the crazy thing that people are like how you owe me something. They don't owe you anything. There's no contract between you and them. They don't owe you money. They don't owe you anything. Right? Like been watching The Last Dance, how like people were like, "Oh, Michael Jordan, he doesn't owe you shit." Like I hate Michael Jordan. He is a trash bag of a human being, but like
he is a trash of a human being, yeah.
Like, but he doesn't owe you shit. He doesn't owe you anything. None of these people that are on these teams, that are on these TV shows, they don't owe you anything. Unless there is a contract between you, they don't owe you anything.
You fan A and said athletic person or athlete or actor or famous person.
Right.
Did you forge that contract? Is it signed, sealed, and delivered?
It's not legally binding. Like this, you watching them on TV, that's not a legally binding contract of any sort. You dumbass. and the fact that they constantly, like, we see it so often, all the damn time, over and over and over again. And it's just like, y'all just don't.
Y'all don't know.
It's a broken record at this point. And it's just like, you're not owed anything from anyone. Right. Unless there is a contract in place, they don't owe you anything.
I've actually, before we get out of here, I have 2 more points here on Damian and DEO, youtube.com, as well as anchor.fm. I just want to say 2 things. The first thing was someone got into a back and forth with Alexa Bliss about her breast augmentation, right?
Yeah.
She said that she got it, but that wasn't good enough for the person that was interacting with her.
Yeah.
They went back and forth about why'd you do that to your body, blah, 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 blah. It's like, dude, you literally pointed out when she showed a Throwback Thursday or Take It Back Tuesday of her managing a team back in NXT versus now. And she said, and Nikki Bella has said the same thing. Best investment I ever had was my breast augmentation. Cool, great. That gives you no right to do shit like that. To just say, hey, something's different here. No, you're not funny. You're not cool. You're not funny. This is what makes athletes and celebrities not like you.
Right.
Is because you feel this. And I'll be honest, when I worked in film, my first job was at a film studio, and I met celebrities all the time. But I never thought I'm gonna knock them down a peg.
Right.
I treated them like humans, like fellow humans, but I never wanted to knock them down a peg. What we see on social media is a lot of I'm gonna take you down a peg. And my second point is when you and I have talked about OnlyFans. There's been a skyrocket since COVID.
Right.
There have been entertainers, athletes, wrestlers,
Yep.
and the like to have an OnlyFans account.
Right.
Why is it that I see on my social media timelines, and I like to think of myself as an ally. I may not be the ally that some people might want, but I am an ally nonetheless. Where I call people out on sharing photos of said talents on timelines because one dude had the nerve, DEO, to say, I want my money back.
Because it wasn't what I expected.
And I saw that this morning.
Yeah. So here's the thing. You can get sued for sharing people's content.
Yes.
And you'll lose. No two ways about it. Because when you sign up, so when you as a user sign up for a lot of these things, whether it be to look at OnlyFans, hell, you know when you first get your phone and there's that long ass thing that nobody ever reads? Right. You are signing, that's a contract. So when you skip all that and then hit agree, that's a contract, right? So when people do this, like that's a form of assault is what that is. When you share people's stuff, whether it be OnlyFans or whether they be private pictures that somebody hacked into someone's iCloud account and then released them onto the timeline. That's a form of assault. You can and will go to jail if somebody sues you.
And you should go to jail.
And you should go to, like, this is not acceptable. You should not be, this isn't something that you should be doing, right? You signed up for OnlyFans. You didn't, like, can you complain about content? Sure. You can complain as much as you want. But what you shouldn't be doing is then going and saying, oh, I want my money back. No, dude. No. That's not how this works, bro.
That's not how this works, bro.
That's like, what the fuck? And like, to then disseminate people's content, that's highly illegal. And the thing is, like, people have done it so many times on social media that they think that they can get away with it. See, here's the thing. All this bullshit that you're doing now, once we get back to normal, as someone that works in the legal industry, a lot of this dumb shit that people are doing and thinking that they can get away with it, lawyers have just been watching this shit, waiting. They are just biding their time for things to open back up. There's going to be a wave of lawsuits that you guys can't fucking imagine. You are going to see so much stuff. I'm going to be happy when it happens. One, more money from me.
It's going to keep you,
because I get to film those depositions and see y'all look fucking stupid on camera. But like, you're going to see all these things because right now things are kind of shut down. But like, and during this pandemic, people have started to show their ignorance, especially in pro wrestling Twitter. But like, if a female wrestler decides to, they can take that to the police.
Yep. And then what you're left with.
Yeah, because you can't be like, oh, I didn't do it. No, you did. We have it right here.
So there was, and I'm going to kind of tweak it a bit. There was a situation maybe about 3 weeks ago to a month ago. EC3, Derek Bateman, whatever you want to call him, Ethan Carter III. Mm-hmm. There was a woman who went on a social media tirade who literally said, I felt I was in a close relationship with said person. Mm-hmm. And then they tossed me out like garbage. That's how she felt.
Right.
The amount of wrestling fans, and I don't know the parameters. I don't know if there was any kind of physical. She didn't seem like there was any physical altercations between the two of them. But this goes back to what you and I talk about all the time about if you get involved on a friendship level, on a helping level with people of a certain ilk, why do you feel like you are owed some sort of extra, like just extra friendliness, extra, like what's the end game here? You know, And it's a little unfair because we lambaste the male fans when it comes to the women, but usually we lambaste the male talent when it comes to the opposite direction.
Right. Yeah.
All I'm gonna say is, if you're a stalker, if you're a creep, I don't care what gender you are, stop doing it.
Yeah, and we've had many. There's one person in particular that I remember a couple years ago. I used to follow them because I like their art, but then the art became specified to just one talent, one performer.
We've talked about this, yes.
Yeah, and it was like, now this is getting stalkery. You know what I'm saying? And like people were like, oh, she can, and the shield of her gender was what people were using to defend this. And I was like, no, you can't, if a man can't, in this situation, if a man did the same thing that she does, y'all would be ready to fucking kill them, crucify them on the timeline. Right. And like, but that's that thing. And we can talk about this tomorrow about how people, especially in these niche kinds of communities, have one-sided relationships with people. To them, it's I feel like we're this thing. And to the other person, they might have no clue that this other person feels that type of stuff.
Of course.
And that's something that we see a lot in pro wrestling Twitter, whether it be with the talent or even with other Twitter users. So yeah.
I think you saying Twitter users is when people have a self-imposed, I'll say self-imposed badge of authority on social media, they tend to think it's worth more than what we all know it to be.
Right.
And what I've seen over the last 3 years and being around, and 3 or 4 years being around wrestling and sports and being around athletes, and just the level of expectancy, it makes me annoyed because there is a clear line between fandom and the fandom that you support.
Right.
You can be a positive fan like you and I are. Look, full disclosure, y'all, there are some athletes out there that DEO and I, we love, we adore, we support, but we'll never cross that line ever, because we don't know. We understand what the game is. We know what it is. If you work in some sort of public domain, interaction helps.
Yeah.
To a point. Right. So the sooner you as fans realize this, I'm not saying they're using you for support or they're leading you on. All I'm saying is, if you support an artist, if you support an athlete, just support them.
That's it.
Buy some merch.
Buy some merch. You know what I'm saying? Retweet their stuff. Sure. Give them some art. Cool. Whatever. But that does not mean that y'all are besties. Right.
And people make that mistake all the time.
Like, yeah, it's people have to let go of this transactional mindset. Just because you give does not mean that you are going to receive in a situation, especially when it comes to relationships, whether they be business, platonic, or romantic. There is no transactional thing. I give you this, I'm supposed to get this back in return. No. Nope. And how you feel does not mean that's how the other person feels. No, can't do that. So
it's cool. It's cute when we're like 7 or 8, when it's unrequited. It's like, oh, you tried. Okay, good job, kid.
Right.
It's a lot different when you're an adult. I'm sorry. It's just a lot different. And you can debate me all you want. I will gladly do the psychological debate with you. I will gladly do that debate with you all. But I think that's the perfect time for DEO and I to kind of leave off on this. We will see you tomorrow when we do an early edition of Random Fridays on a Thursday. Yep. So as always, I'm just DEO on Twitter and on Instagram. Damian G347 on Twitter as well as Instagram. The Damian G Show on Anchor.fm. Special thanks to Eugene for always being a really good supporter, and Sarah for always supporting us for everything we do. And I will catch you probably tomorrow because you know what? Y'all need to stop.